Welcome to the Mile High Podcast. We are coming to you from an altitude of 5,280 feet, where we anticipate you to be in September 21st, 24th for Mile High 11. If you are listening to this podcast or watching it, we really encourage you to hit subscribe so you never miss any Mile High Tick, and most certainly don't miss being at Mile High Live in September. And we're so thrilled to have Danielle Angela at Mile High on this podcast, and she'll be with us live in September, which is so thrilling. And I know she's thrilled about it too. And so welcome to the podcast, Dr. Danielle Angela. She's a chiropractor from Washington, Missouri. She graduated from Logan in 2008. And after her initial years in practice, she decided to move into helping other chiropractors go from what might be common in the profession of burnout and exhaustion and doing things in a way that might not be the most efficiency for their own health and life, to helping them up level. She has helped hundreds of health and wellness practitioners start courses and supplement their practice income, and really just more ease, joy, and profitability in their life. So thank you for joining us today, Dr. Danielle Angela.
Hi, well, thank you again so much for having me. I have been really excited to speak with you today. The more I get to know the Mile High community, the more I love it. So it's exciting and fun.
And we're excited to have you there. The community part is really phenomenal. You know, all the things I hear, what we're saying earlier to me before I start recording about being with, like-minded people. Of the people that go to Mile High, that we get the best speakers and people give incredible content, but I hear over and over what they love most is being with the people and being in community, which is really cool. And so we're excited to have you there. Now, I think people would really gain from this podcast getting to know you better and getting to know more about your journey, and from where you started to where you are. So, because I think you have a unique journey, and I think people gain from that in connecting with you overall. How about we start with the beginning? How did you find your way into chiropractic?
Oh, wow. That's such an interesting question. I haven't thought about this in quite a while. When I was around 5 years old, my mom's younger sister, my aunt, was injured in a cheerleading accident. She was an elite level gymnast, cheerleader, track star. She was in beauty pageants. She had a room full of trophies and awards, and her injury changed her life. She became a quadriplegic. She no longer had the ability to walk or use her hands. So she had to have full-time, around-the-clock care for the rest of her life now. And I'm 42, almost 43. So let's see. She was 16 at the time of her injury, and that was almost 40 years ago now.
Okay.
So she's probably around 54. And, being as young as I was at the time, like I knew that the injury was very significant, but I didn't really understand the full scope of it. But what was significant for me and her experience was that a part of what she had to do at home, or part of what we needed to do with her family, was help her do certain exercises to help maintain mobility and range of motion in her joints. And I just loved doing that. And so my grandparents were like, you'd be a great physical therapist. And that was the idea that was kind of implanted into me at a very early age. I'm going to be a physical therapist. And as I got closer to graduating from high school, I started looking at the schools and universities that were in the area that I lived in that offered PT schools, and they were all so expensive. And I knew there was no way my parents would be able to afford tuition to one of those schools. So I then, instead of going to PT school, I auditioned at a different local liberal arts school for a dance scholarship. And I was awarded a scholarship, and I went to that school because a lot of my tuition was going to be covered by my scholarship. It did not have a physical therapy program. So I majored in business with an emphasis in retail management and marketing. And then later, right before graduation, actually, I was very close to graduating. This was a little bit of an early midlife crisis. I was like, I don't think I really want to work in retail. This is kind of boring. I don't want to have to do this for the rest of my life. So I changed my major to social work. So I ended up finishing school having studied business, retail, marketing, and social work. It was such a weird combination. And then from, let's say, around the time that I graduated with my undergraduate degree until about a year later, I was working full time in retail, and I kept running into people, or like people would come into the store that I worked in who I went to high school with, or even had gone to college with just a year or two before, and they were going to school at the chiropractic school in the area that I live in. And I was like, chiropractic, this keeps coming up. Like, what is this chiropractic thing? So I literally got on Google, or whatever the search engine was I was using. I guess it was Google. It was 2002 or three at this time. And I'm
Right.
like, Googling, what is chiropractic? And I read about it, just through the mainstream description. And I thought, oh, this sounds kind of similar to physical therapy. I bet I could do this. I could do this chiropractic thing, and it would make sense because I could help people, which was like my social work education, and I could run my own business, which was my business education.
Well, there you
And
go.
I told my family I'm going to go to chiropractic school, and they all thought I was a little insane because we don't have any chiropractors. Actually, no one even that works in healthcare in our family. And it was scary, but I just did it. I literally chose chiropractic as a profession, as a career, because I wanted to own my own business and help people. I did not have a super impactful experience with chiropractic before choosing this profession. In fact, I'd only been to a chiropractor probably about 4 times in my whole life at that point, and I was 23 or 24. So it was a big leap of faith, really, for me to make that choice. So now here we are, all these years later. I think almost well, it's been 15 years now since I graduated from chiropractic school. So almost 20 years ago that I started chiropractic school, and I'm so happy that I didn't go to PT school. I also ironically considered pharmacy school, and I'm really happy that I did not do that. I don't know what
Well,
would have happened if I had chosen that path in life. I don't think we'd be here right now, that's for sure.
well, I'll tell you a little known fact that people don't know, that you'll find interesting, and our audience is going to find interesting. Donnie Epstein actually had my stepdad. He actually had his application for PT school filled out, and like was
Mhm.
walking to the mailbox with it. And a
Yeah,
cousin saw him, or uncle or somebody said, "Hey, you've got to check out chiropractic, and don't do that. Don't send that in." And it was literally, which is so interesting. And think of how the impact he's had and how that could have been different in terms of many people. And my wife, Rochelle, was actually in pharmacy school. And
wow.
yeah, she was in her last half year and actually had a job lined up, and just decided, she visited Sherman because her brother was at Sherman, and she just said, I can't put pills in a bottle. This isn't like what I want to do. And
Yeah.
you know, people's life paths can change.
Mine certainly did as well. Yeah.
So
And I'm
then,
so thankful.
yeah, ditto on those counts. So I'm glad both Donnie and Rochelle, because I wouldn't be where I am, and things. So then somewhere along the way, as you said, grateful to not be on that path of pharmacy or PT. Where did
Yeah.
you then first connect, or say have a wow relative to chiropractic's heart, soul, and philosophy, and what it was really about?
Wow. Gosh, that's such an interesting question. I don't think that I really had that like experience or that connection with the roots of chiropractic until probably 2017,
Okay.
um, which, was like 9 years into my career as a chiropractor at that time. When
Uh-huh.
I finished chiropractic school, I was accepted into a residency at the school that I graduated from. So I ended up working there for the first 4 years that I was in practice. And my residency was in sports and rehabilitation. So I was observing surgeries like neurosurgery, orthopedic surgery, um, fusions, what else? Discectomies, all kinds of, invasive procedures to help patients that were experiencing chronic pain. And it was an incredible experience. My residency, there was so much more to it than that, but I grew up in chiropractic in a different, much different philosophy or perspective on what chiropractic is. And yeah, so that's, I was just kind of like, we adjust, we manipulate, whatever, same thing at that time to remove back pain and neck
Right.
pain and like help people with headaches and help them overcome injuries.
Mm-hmm.
And I didn't dislike that work, but at a certain point for me in private practice, I just felt so out of integrity with helping people with chronic pain who were not also changing their lifestyle to, help themselves get better and to not rely on me as a band-aid for their musculoskeletal issues. So it was exhausting. I found that to just be really, really like a lot to carry for people. And I also didn't, this is an important thing, I also didn't have the skill sets at that time to be able to communicate with people about those things, right? Where I was like trying to be nice and make sure that they liked me so that they would want to come back, but I didn't want them to have to come back all the time because they were in pain. And it just created this like never ending cycle of, I don't like this. It doesn't feel like I'm really making the impact with people that I want to be making.
Mm-hmm.
So that was around 2014, 15 when I started to really feel out of integrity. And then as I started coaching women in chiropractic, I got introduced actually to techniques like BGI and network. And that's when I was like, maybe all of those people that I thought were kind of crazy were right. Maybe there is something more to this that we're doing when we are adjusting people. Like maybe, just maybe, we're actually helping them get more connected to the higher power, God, universe, source, whatever you call it, right? Like maybe we're actually doing that. And it was the first time that I really considered that as like a scientific possibility. I think more so now even a probability, but I just thought, oh, that's like some old-fashioned woo kind of like maybe some strange cultish sort of philosophy that the Palmers started way back in the 1800s.
Right. And I will tell you you're not the only one that's had that experience. I mean,
yeah,
lots of chiropractors, some people before school, some during school, and some, 20, 30 years later, and some shortly in practice, and some never, obviously. So I'm really glad. I mean, I see your comments and things that you post, and I know how much that is, what you embrace more compared to, like many of us as we have this journey through chiropractic. So I personally think is really beautiful. It's nice to see it's kind of like a flower blossoming or something. So now, what about your journey in practice? Because you've had a very significant shift. I know you talk about people having overwhelm and exhaustion and burnout. Was that you at some point?
Oh yeah, for sure. Yeah. Yeah, I was, just doing what I thought, what I knew at the time to be true in regard to being successful in practice was just work as hard as you can, like go as fast as you can, work as hard as you can, be at every event, doing everything all the time to grow your business. And it worked. However, it was exhausting. And it didn't take me very long before I realized this is out of integrity for me. My own lifestyle and my health is not where I want it to be. It wasn't terrible, but it certainly wasn't optimal. And yet, as a chiropractor, our like mantra in a sense is to help people live optimally and help them reach their optimal wellness, their optimal health. And man, I'll tell you, when I'm like out of integrity with something that I believe to be true, I can no longer do it. I just can't, I can't push myself through it. I can't fake it. I have to make changes. And when I realized how I was practicing was affecting my health, I was like, well, this doesn't work anymore. So what's next? I took a little bit of time off and just, like sort of studied in a way, like listening to podcasts, reading books, and sort of incorporating things that I was learning from outside of chiropractic into my own perspective about like, what does it mean to be successful in practice? And it just became so different for me. Starting my next practice, it was just one room, and I was renting that room from someone else that owned a wellness center. But I had like 12 office hours at that time, and I had 2 little kids, and sometimes they'd come with me to work. People loved it. The irony of this is that like as I condensed down my practice, I actually made a lot more money more quickly because
Ah.
I didn't have all of the high expenses that I had before. I was able to run a more efficient and profitable business, and it
Hmm.
didn't require as many people on my schedule for me to be able to do that. So I just found like I felt much more balanced. I know for a lot of people in chiropractic, our our roots are kind of in this mission of helping as many people as possible.
Hmm.
But I learned to look at it from a different perspective, which was like, is this sustainable for me? I can help a lot of people this week, this month, or even this year, but what will be the effect on me at the end of that time period? And will I be able to keep going? So I've just found, for my own physical constitution, I need to go slower. I need to design my practice differently so that I can see fewer people and not have to rush as quickly from person to person. But that also means that I charge higher fees than pretty
Hmm.
much any other chiropractor in my area
Hmm.
to make the money that I want to make doing what I do.
Right. There's an important realization. I mean, we want to change the world. We want to change the world's thoughts about healthcare and the paradigm, and we see the injustices or inaccuracies or falls in the current healthcare system as chiropractors, right? And then also we don't want to destroy ourselves in the process. And the reality is we can't really take care of everybody. If you got a town like us of 100,000 people where we are in Boulder, I
Yeah.
mean, how many people can I really take care of? Or anybody. And if you do that at your own expense, it's not really effective. You can take care of a lot of people and take care of yourself, and it's wise to take care of yourself so you're a better servant to others.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, my hope is that each individual person can decide what works for them, right? Like what
Mhm.
volume of patients is healthy for them to manage, and how much time off do they need to rest and recover. I have a connective tissue disorder that makes my joints really flexible and bendy, which is, I mean, fun when you're a cheerleader. It's great as a dancer, right? But not so great for a physically demanding job,
Mhm.
that I wasn't even aware of having that condition at the time that I chose chiropractic. But so for me, like my physical output, I need to be protective of that.
Yeah.
Whereas like mental, I can like mentally output nonstop. I can constantly be like learning, reading, creating videos, social media content. My output level there is tremendous,
Hmm.
but physically, my constitution is not, like designed for seeing 1,000 patients a week.
Right.
So I just had to like let that be okay. So
Right. Right.
I get to design my business differently.
Right. And that's important. Um, can you say anything about your journey of how you switched and like what that felt like to you? What it felt like in burnout, and then how the contrast when that shifted and how you experienced practice and your personal life.
Yeah. Yeah, I don't want to sound too overly dramatic about it, but when you asked the question, my first thought was it felt like death. It felt like dying
Mhm.
because for a brief period of time, I thought, if this is what it takes to be successful in chiropractic, I don't want to be a chiropractor anymore. I don't
Mhm.
want to do this anymore.
Don't I mean,
But then,
you're not the first person that I've heard that from. You're not
oh no,
people experience that all the time.
yeah, yeah. But without chiropractic, I didn't really know who I was because chiropractic and the chiropractic lifestyle is actually so intrinsic to me. It's like I was a chiropractor long before I ever knew that I was a chiropractor. I'm getting teary-eyed talking about this. So at that time, I was like, if this is what it takes to be successful in practice, I don't want to do this. But what does this mean for the rest of my life? Like, how do I contribute in a meaningful way?
Right.
I knew that I still wanted to own a business, but I didn't know what that would look like or how to make it make sense and take care of my little kids. They were really little at that time. And then another one came along later. So that just made things even more complicated. But yeah, it was very hard. It was a dark period, honestly, in my life. But I'm so thankful that I was able to experience that and come through the other side and just be able to say, there's a lot of pressure. We can feel a lot of pressure intrinsically and externally to reach certain levels of success or to have a practice that looks a certain way, that is a certain size, that has a certain number of treatment rooms or, a certain number of patient visits a week. But ultimately, we forget to ask ourselves, is the person behind all of that healthy and happy? We don't talk about that very often. And I found, through a lot of, I had mentioned to you before we were recording, I've done over 400 podcast episodes now as a podcaster, where I've been on the other side of the microphone and then many others as an interviewee. And I have found through so many conversations with other chiropractors specifically that they often are not saying what's really happening for them. They're not posting the hard stuff, the challenging stuff, the exhausting stuff on social media. They're only posting the highlight reel. I mean, we all know that, but it's so easy to forget and just see what's in front of you on social media and think everybody else is doing so much better. Why am I struggling?
Right.
When it's really not true.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's a symptom of the time of life in the world that we're living in, and the impact, as we all know, on mental health for adults and especially kids and teens is devastating. For sure. And you see it in people thinking that, oh, now I feel like a failure in practice because they're doing this, and you're comparing yourself. So on the other side, that death, right? On the other side of that, right? The positive, what was it like, a rebirth, or what did it feel like when you made the changes that you made?
Yeah, it felt uplifting and inspiring and empowering. It still feels that way now, even 6 years later. I'm like, I'm so glad to still be here. I'm so glad. I'm still so happy to be a chiropractor 15 years into this profession. It's not always easy. I still have student loan debt, by the way. People are always like, well, I have student loans and I feel trapped. I get that. I still have student loan debt too. And despite that, I don't even care about that. I think if we can set aside the financial aspects of practice and just look at the bigger picture of what it is that we do as chiropractors and the callings that we have and the impact that we make on other people's lives, and even just the knowledge that we carry and that we pass on to our children, that in and of itself to me is worth it. My kids get to experience a much, much different life growing up than I ever got to as a child.
So now with that, you help people in this area. If people want to, I want to ask you more about how you close the gap and key things that you would recommend, like someone listening to this podcast, like things that they could do now to make a change. However, before I ask you about that, how do people get to know you better? How do they connect with you more before they see you out on stage at Mile High?
Yeah, the best ways to connect with me really is Facebook. I'm pretty active there. I post every day and I share a lot there. I have a Facebook group called the Health and Wellness Practitioners group, which is mostly chiropractors, but there's other types of health and wellness practitioners there as well. So that's a free resource. There's lots of different trainings and videos that I have inside of the group that are available as well.
Okay, great. Now, if people want to close that gap from burnout, overwhelm, maybe I'll use the word empowerment,
Mm,
or freedom, or
mhm.
ease, what are some key things they need to know or do or look at in terms of it? What are some keys to start that shift in experience?
The first thing is like the hardest thing, but it's looking internally. It's looking at what stories have you been telling yourself? What beliefs have you been operating from? And really examining those, because we create our realities, and we create our realities based upon how we think, how we feel, and what we believe. So if you feel overwhelmed, run down, and exhausted, you have thoughts, feelings, and beliefs that have contributed to creating that reality. So you have to start shifting those thought processes, the feeling states that you choose consciously or unconsciously, and the belief system that you operate from,
Mhm.
right? Like, I believed wholeheartedly that for the first 7 years of practice, I should expect to work every day, not take a vacation, and to be exhausted. That was my belief, right?
Right,
That's what a lot of us believe, that it has to be hard and we have to be exhausted. If we're not exhausted, we're not working hard enough.
right, right.
So let's ask ourselves how that belief is really working.
Yeah.
Like, look at the rate of women that leave practice just 5 years after graduation. Is that belief really serving us?
Hmm.
And I would say it's not. Um, so looking at the thoughts, feelings, beliefs that you're operating from, and how they are creating, what reality they are creating for you. And when you can really accept that, like, through above, down, inside out, right? Above, down, inside out. From the inside out, you have created your life.
Hmm.
Do you like it? If not, then you've got to start to become someone different on the inside first. And as you change
Right.
your vibration, you change your state of vibration, you change how things are on the outside. Your life has to start shifting and changing,
Hmm.
because you are no longer a match for that
Hmm.
vibrationally.
Right. Right.
It sounds so woo, but I think the Mile High community is ready to hear it.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And that's important. That's important. And people start in all different parts of practice in different stages of their life, and your life goes through seasons.
Yeah.
And also, I'm sure people can also scale up their practice to serving more people, but from a different strategy that may not have
Mhm.
to include overwhelm through it.
For
Most
sure.
certainly.
Yeah. I feel really strongly that practice owners need to start hiring associate doctors sooner than what they think that they should. Like, they need to start planning for that if they want to be able to serve more people, but they want to also preserve their own health and have time, freedom, and flexibility to be with their family. You cannot do it alone. You have to build a team, especially because what we do is physically demanding. And as you add more appointments to your schedule, it takes more time. You only have so much of it. It is one
Right.
of our most, if not the most, precious resource that we have.
Right.
So when you look through a different lens, a lot of people, women especially, come to me and they're like, I'm drowning. I have so many patients. I'm like turning new patients away constantly because there's no room on my schedule. You have to, proactively is the best way, but you have to at some point accept this shift that happens from like being self-employed to being a business owner and growing a company. And that requires growing a team and no longer having your practice be about you and whether or not people like you and they come to see you, but they come to your practice because they know that this is a business that they can trust.
Right.
It's a hard shift for people to make. It's been a hard shift for me to make in my own businesses,
Hmm.
but it's essential for our longevity.
Right. Right. Absolutely. Absolutely. I want to ask you another question about that. Before I do that, I know you're thrilled to be at Mile High. And what are you most thrilled about? What are some of the things you're most thrilled about, just about being there, but also about sharing from the stage?
Mm. sharing from the stage is like mind-boggling to me. I've been doing that now for 5 years, and I still can't believe that I get to do that. I'm just honored really to be able to share authentically in a space such as Mile High, and
Mhm.
trust that it will impact a lot of people. And as it impacts those people, they take that and it impacts other people. So it's just this huge ripple effect, right?
Mhm.
Um, but even just being in the room at Mile High, I'm excited to just be there and look around and like see like, oh, these are my people. These are the people that I'm like most aligned with, in so many ways, not just about like what is a cell station, but also how we live our lives and what our lifestyles are like too.
I got to tell you, what you just said is what I hear so often from speakers, that it's a lot of speakers have been to Mile High multiple times or were attendees, but the ones that come and they've never spoken or attended, it was their first time, they tell me all the time, like, this is my home. These are the people that I
Mhm.
vibe with, both the
Yeah.
attendees, but also the other speakers. And I was like, I'm really grateful that it's this home in the center of the country for people that value certain, the heart and soul of what we do as chiropractors, and for them to have a place that
Mhm.
they get to see each other. I didn't necessarily see that initially, and so I'm glad that that got born out of that. So we'll be wrapping up in just a moment. I want to ask you a last question here, which is, um, what would be your advice for someone that is struggling with that overwhelm or burnout, or struggling with, they want to serve more, they know they can give more, but they're feeling that way? Like, what's a piece of advice for them to, like, at that point in life or practice?
This is advice that was given to me by my mentor, and he wasn't always great at practicing it, but I really took this to heart. It's to never sacrifice what matters most for what matters least. It's not to say that your patients matter the least. It's don't sacrifice your health and your happiness to chase success or to reach certain benchmarks that are just arbitrary. They're just arbitrary, right? And even if it feels scary to do, even if it feels really uncomfortable to slow down for a bit, you have to trust that putting your health first is the most important thing. And it will be beneficial, not just for you, but for everyone who is impacted by you.
Mm-hmm. Wow, super important. Yeah, super important. Well, I'm really grateful for you to take the time to be on this podcast, because, as you said, our time is our most valuable asset. And I always knew that. I learned that in practice, having kids.
Mhm.
Having a major health emergency, I learned it on a different level when that happened,
Yeah.
embodied it in a different way and experience. So I really appreciate you using your most valuable asset to be with us on the podcast, and also be with us as Mile High in September. And I value that of all the attendees. They could be anywhere on the planet, and they choose it to their time, energy, and resources to be there. And that's what our practice members do. And we have to be in the best shape to take care of them, you know?
Yeah.
So
Yeah. And I can't wait for September.
well, we will see you in September, and we'll look forward to seeing everybody else there. So rise up to milehigh.com, and the rates rise as you get closer. That's no secret in
Mhm.
any event. So stop procrastinating and rise up between now and sooner the better. And we look forward to seeing everybody on higher ground. We look forward to seeing you there, Dr. Danielle, and keep changing spines, lives, and minds with chiropractic.
Yes.